Welcome to the Reasonable Theology podcast, where we present sound doctrine in plain language. We're here to help you better understand, articulate, and live out the fullness of the Christian faith. And now, here's your host, Clay Kraby.
Welcome to this Q&A episode of the Reasonable Theology podcast. We have a question that comes in from a listener named Kyler. Let's give that a listen right now.
Hi, my name is Kyler. I'm from Hibbing, Minnesota. My question is how to explain to somebody that God didn't have a creator without them questioning you, well then who created God? Thank you. I hope I hear from you on the next podcast.
Well, thank you, Kyler, for listening to the podcast and for submitting your question. So first we need to understand that our claim is that everything that began to exist, everything that was created, has to have a cause or a creator. And so some will respond to this claim by asking the question you asked. Then who created God? Well, this is a good question and one that can leave Christians feeling stumped on how best to answer it. However, notice something important about our claim. We do not say that everything that exists has to have a cause, but everything that began to exist has a cause. Every effect must have a cause. Every creation must have a creator. But God does not have a cause or a creator because He has always existed. He is eternal. He has no beginning and no end. That's part of what it means for God to be God. It's that He is the uncreated creator. He's the uncaused cause of all things. He has to be, or He wouldn't be God. If God had someone or something that brought Him into being, there would necessarily be something older and more powerful than God. And then we're no longer talking about God at all, because the God of the Bible is, by definition, both eternal and all-powerful, among other essential attributes of God. Here's one way we can try to wrap our minds around this concept. Imagine you drew two circles on a piece of paper and labeled one of them God and the other not God. Everything in that second circle, time, matter, energy, the universe, the world, trees, everything must have had a creator. God, however, is not in the same category as everything else in the universe. As creator, He is in a separate category from His creation. We make a mistake when we imagine one circle with God in it and all that He made in that same circle. There are many worldviews, in fact, that even reject God and think that there is only one circle and everything in the universe must fit within it and play by the same rules. Well, that's a mistake because when we are talking about God, we are necessarily talking about a being that is an entirely different category from what He created. God didn't have a creator because when we are talking about God, we are, by definition, talking about the creator of all other things. Now, for some who might ask you the question, well, who created God? That answer will be enough for them. However, some people you talk to will have difficulty with the idea that God could always have existed, that He didn't need a beginning. So let's dig a little deeper to explore how that can be the case. God has always existed, and He exists outside of time because He's the one who created it. Time is one of the many things that would be in that second circle we drew a moment ago. Even those who don't believe in a creator recognize that our universe and even time had a beginning. The late physicist Stephen Hawking said that almost everyone now believes that the universe and time itself had a beginning at the Big Bang. Now, while Hawking and many others see the Big Bang to be the ultimate cause of all things, the Bible tells us that God is the uncaused cause. He is the uncreated creator of everything else. In the first chapter of the Gospel of John, in the first 3 verses, we read, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through Him, and without Him was not anything made that was made." everything that began to exist must have a cause. That cause must necessarily exist prior to the thing that came into being, whether that's matter or energy or anything else. And so we aren't bending the rules to fit the Bible when we say that God did not need to have a cause. That something was the primary cause of everything else is not exclusive to those who believe in God as the Creator. You know, there was a time when scientists argued that the universe itself was eternal, but they've since come to recognize that the universe must have had a beginning. Therefore, they must attempt to explain what it was that existed prior to the universe that caused it to begin. What was it that caused the Big Bang? For the universe to explode into being at the Big Bang, as they claim, there had to be something in existence beforehand. But as R.C. Sproul has said, nothing doesn't explode. You know, there's an old saying, out of nothing, nothing comes. Those who reject the idea of a personal creator are forced to either accept the unsatisfying answer that nothing caused everything, or they have to acknowledge that something must have existed prior to the Big Bang for it to occur. And the questions must continue in search of an ultimate impersonal cause that pre-existed all other things and brought them into being. While some worldviews are willing to accept the idea of an impersonal, uncreated something that caused everything else, they have difficulty with the idea that a personal, uncreated creator caused all things. As Christians, we know that everything that came into being must have a cause, and everything that was created must have a creator. The Bible reveals that this uncaused cause, this uncreated creator of all things, is God. We see it from the very first verse of the Bible. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The rest of Scripture lays out all that we are to believe concerning God and what God requires of His creation. So what can you say to a friend who asks, who created God? You can say that no one and nothing created God because God has no beginning. Since He created everything in the universe, including time, He exists outside of those things. That's what makes Him God. Kyler, I hope that answer was helpful to you, and I'm encouraged that you're thinking through these important questions. For those of you listening, if you have a question you'd like answered, visit reasonabletheology.org/ask and leave us a short message that we might answer on an upcoming episode of the podcast. If you found that helpful, I encourage you to share this episode with others, and if you haven't already done so, please subscribe and leave us a review in your favorite podcast player.
Thanks for listening to the Reasonable Theology Podcast. Be sure to visit reasonabletheology.org for more helpful resources on understanding, articulating, and living out the Christian faith. In addition to the show notes for this episode, you'll find articles, videos, book reviews, and much more. That's reasonabletheology.org.